labels that are not very accurate. You know, for example, the label natural. You know, what is natural beef or natural whatever? Most people assume if they're getting natural beef that these cows were out grazing or they had some sort of a normal life. But that doesn't mean that at all. You can have cows that are raised in feedlots, implanted with hormones, and given drugs and high energy concentrates for feed, and then they can be killed and their meat can be sold and labeled as natural. So you have these labels that aren't very accurate, and so there's no transparency, and there's even, I would say, some misrepresentations in these labels. So that's the other presentation I'll be doing.
Huh. Yeah, that word natural is, I think, a really easy word to abuse because I'm natural, right? I'm part of nature. I'm an organism walking around, right? And I can build all kinds of forms of technology, right? I can make a house if I were trained. Theoretically, that's natural, right? I mean, I did it, and it's not like, I don't know, I didn't come from something other than nature, so why can't that be natural? Why can't, a giant machine be natural? I mean, so it just seems to me a pretty gutless word.
Yeah, and it can be exploited in certain ways.
Exactly.
and interpreted in certain ways, like even genetically altered stuff can be natural.
Yeah, sure.
Or giving hormones to cows can be natural. Maybe even giving, well, I wonder if giving like human hormones to a pig, for instance, if that would be natural. Well, I guess if we're natural and we do it, and the pig's natural, we're natural, that's natural.
Yeah, and I think that's the sort of one of the kind of industrial lawyer arguments, you know?
Yeah. I think that's right. But I think for most people, they'd say, that doesn't seem right.
Exactly.
It doesn't seem like we should be doing it. Yeah.
Right. The spirit of the word gets really abused.
Yes. Which is also not sustainable.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's sustainable, right? That's this other word that, what are you sustaining? For whose benefit is it being sustained? These are all these kinds of questions that we have to think about. So when I'm thinking about a sustainable agriculture system, right? We hear all kinds of things today. Organic is sustainable, and maybe it's more sustainable or less unsustainable than some of the alternatives, but that's this word that's being kind of pushed around to organic.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So I wonder, where do you think our food system might be going?
Well, I think we have sort of a polarization in the food system. There's been this ongoing march towards more industrialization, which continues, both in animal and plant agriculture. More monocrops and more chemical dependent. And then people who eat this stuff also become more chemical dependent. So there's this interesting, I think, parallel and balance that exists if we look at it. We're producing unhealthy food and we're becoming unhealthy when we're consuming it. But then there's another whole burgeoning movement, I would say, of farmers markets, of community-supported agriculture programs, of community gardening, where people are getting closer to the source of their food. They're taking part in producing food. They're investing in it. Like a community-supported agriculture program, for example, is where consumers will invest in a farm at the beginning of the growing season. They'll, pay like $500 or something. And then over the course of the season, they get a share of what is grown. And so they've invested in the program, and if it's a bumper crop year, they'll get a lot of food. If it isn't, they won't get as much. So they're participating in the process instead of being removed from it. Mm-hmm. And you also have farmers markets, which are allowing purchasers of food to get to know the growers of food and to interact in a positive way and to develop relationships. And that is also growing. So I think you have sort of the typical farms that have historically been bought up by and pushed out of business by these large industrial operations. So that's been going on and still does. But you also have this small farm movement that is spreading all over the country, and it's, I think, a very positive thing. And I just hope that it grows more quickly. And it's a grassroots movement. It's sort of a local movement, and it's gaining steam. And it could ultimately be, that's what I hope the future of agriculture looks like. More local, more regional, more plant-based, and more connected between the producer and the consumer.
No, there are places though, like just thinking about the United States, where that more localized form of agriculture is pretty, maybe you can almost say easy. I mean, it's not really that easy anywhere. But in Pennsylvania, for example, we have pretty good rain, we have nice soils, right? And you can do crop rotations, right? It supports a really nice diversity of food. Now, you go to Nevada, right? You go to Las Vegas, right? You think about Phoenix or Tucson or Santa Fe or these other, I don't need to list too many. You get the point. Those are places where this kind of movement is not nearly as possible.
It's a lot tougher. It's a lot tougher, and it would require some technology. Now, what kind of technology? And are you going to be irrigating? These get into some questions.
Yeah, well, you can lose 90% of the water.
Yeah, well, unless you have some sort of cover or something, that's another additional investment or input cost, whatever.
Right.
And in some cases, it may be that there are certain areas that don't have as many people. Maybe the land can't carry that many people in an ideal sense. I mean, we're a long way from things balancing out.
Right.
But there are certain areas that maybe aren't meant to be as inhabited as other areas. I mean, certain animals don't live in certain places, and maybe humans shouldn't live in all these places. And again, our population is growing, which is a whole nother issue, and we need to be responsible for our actions and for the footprint that we leave. And I think how we live is a huge determinant of how heavy our footprint's going to be. So numbers are part of it, but not all of it. But I think that
if we all lived like the average Ugandan, we could have 15 billion people on the planet.
It'd be a whole different thing.
It would be really different.
Now, if we all lived like Americans, we're way over.
Well, no, we're just done. The planet is done. I love the evil laugh and everything. No, but it's true. It's true.
It is. Yeah.
So yeah, I think so. You're saying that our food system is kind of going. It has these two tracks.
I think it does. Yes.
But even the really big part, Walmart, is the biggest buyer of organic products out there.
And that says something about what organic means.
Right.
So you have this whole factory farming model, and then you have these labels like natural or organic,
right,
that sound a lot better than they are.
Right.
And so organic is not necessarily that great. It's certainly better than non-organic, but it's not what most people think it is. And it's oftentimes now coming from factory farms, essentially.
Yeah. It chronicled, I think, really pretty interestingly in the Omnivore's Dilemma.
Yeah.
It's 90. You still get 90% of the fossil fuel inputs in a large scale organic farm.
Yes, and that's what we need to move, I think, towards smaller scale, more labor.
Right.
Less capital. Now that's hard work, but you get a group out there working together, it can be pleasant.
Well, it's interesting too that you say that, because that sounds. I mean, when you say, well, more labor and less capital, that would constitute a change in our culture, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be people valuing. I mean, this is the way I hear what you're saying. That would be people valuing work, right, instead of valuing money.
Right.